Hi Hannes, I'm going to show you now how to make the simplest bread you can possibly imagine. It's called no knead bread. There's lots of varieties of recipes on the web which you can look at later. The one I'm going to show you here is a multi-seed bread. Okay, so what I've done is I've put all the dry ingredients into a mixing bowl. I'm going to mix them up carefully now. So in the bowl I've got 300 grams of whole wheat flour, and 100 grams of white flour. I'm using bread flour, but according to the web you can use any flour that you have available. Then I've added a 1/4 teaspoon of instant yeast. You don't need very much yeast for this because this is going to be a slow rise bread dough. 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, which you need for flavouring, and then the bonuses, 25 grams of rolled oats, 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds, 2 tablespoons of sunflower seeds, 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds, and 1 tablespoon of flax seeds. That's it. Just mix them all together. No need for you to see what this looks like. And then just simply tip in 300 mils of water. That's equivalent to 300 grams. And give everything a stir in your bowl. Now, the amount of total water that you're going to add to this dough depends on the hydration level of your flour and the humidity in your room at the time you do this. So just throw in the 300 mils as your starting point and work in as much of the dry ingredients into the water as you can. Now, every time I've done this, I've needed to add a bit more water. Okay. So what we're aiming for is quite a moist dough, but not soggy. It's still got to be able to hold its strength. So I'm going to add a tablespoon of water, stir that in, and see how it goes. Now, if I was making this video for the whole world, I would do it a lot better than this and change the camera angle now so you could see what I'm doing. But I'm not. And what I've got to do now is put my glasses on so I can see what the dough really looks like. It's still a bit dry, so I'm going to add a bit more water. What the water does here is the first part of the cooking process in the oven is really steaming, and so you need the water to help produce the rise in the dough that you're not getting because you haven't bothered to knead this in the first place. So that's why it's got to be slightly moist and sticky. Okay, so this is to give you an idea of how stiff. So it's still pretty firm, but it's also quite moist and sticky at the same time. Now all I need to do is cover the bowl with some cling film and leave this for at least 8 hours. Most of the recipes say anything between 8 and 12 hours. The dough is conventionally cooked in what's called a Dutch oven, which is an earthenware casserole. I don't have one of those, so I'm just going to use this rather big oven-proof casserole dish. And to make things easier to get the dough into the dish, I'm just going to cut a piece of baking sheet so that I can slip this with the dough directly into the pot when it's hot. The dough here is nice and bubbly on the top. It's risen really well, so now it's about twice the volume from when I left it last night. So now I'm just going to get some flour so that I can prepare the table. Because the dough is quite sticky, You need to flour a surface, not too much, and put some flour on your hands, because we're going to convert this into a ball. So I have a bread baking scraping device here, which just makes this a little easier, because the dough is very sticky at this stage, which is as it should be. If you haven't got a scraper, doesn't matter, just use your hands and turn it out onto your floured surface. Try not to squash it too much, because it's spent all night getting air bubbles into it, and so we want to keep as many of those as possible. Get a bit of flour on all sides. It's still quite sticky, so I'm going to add a bit more flour. You want it so that you can manipulate it, and it's going to keep its shape. So you don't need to add too much more flour. If you do, it will just end up really dry. So just like adding the water last night, it's just a little at a time till you've got something you can work with. And you can see there, we've got a round shape. It's not a ball because it doesn't keep its height very well at this stage, but that's fine. And I know that that kind of size will fit into my cooking tin. I'm going to transfer the ball of dough onto my baking sheet. Yes. And then I'm going to put my baking sheet with the dough inside a colander. This is because I'm going to leave it now for 2 hours to rise. I happen to know that this colander will keep my dough in a size that will fit in my casserole dish. You could use a glass bowl or a plastic bowl, anything that will try and keep the dough in the shape that you've just made it. And then I cover it with the cling film that I took off the mixing bowl earlier. And that's just to try and stop it drying up. And now I'm just going to leave that in the kitchen for 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours have passed now. You can see that the dough has again almost doubled in size in the container here, and I'm just going to get the very, very hot casserole dish out of the oven. So I put the oven on half an hour ago so that it's nice and hot. You want about 230 degrees centigrade. So as quickly as you can, use the baking paper to lift the dough out of your container and drop it into your hot pan. You have to do that very quickly because otherwise the dough will try and escape off your piece of paper. I remove a bit of the baking sheet because I don't want it to get stuck in the lid and reduce the stick. Now I'm going to sprinkle on the top a handful of rolled oats. This is because it just makes it look prettier. You will see later that they will all fall off as soon as I pick up the bread, but that doesn't matter. If you want to put seeds or nuts on the top for decoration that will stick, you may need to add an egg wash, but I don't think that's really essential, as you'll see later. Okay, after 30 minutes I take it out of the oven, remove the lid. As you can see, it's risen. It's a little pale at the moment, so I'm going to put it back into the oven. Okay, so our 15 minutes is up. So here it is. So it's still on the paper. It's brown enough for me. It feels quite crusty. You can hear that. You can cook it a bit longer if you want it to sit browner. The base of the bread might get a bit tough if you continue cooking it. One way around that is actually for the last 15 minutes to remove the bread from the casserole dish, but that's a bit complicated, so this is the simplest way of making a loaf of bread. And there we are. Right, so let's have a look inside, see what we've got. You can see straight away how all the oats are falling off the top. So there it is.